India's navy is rapidly growing, but will it be powerful enough to dominate the Indian Ocean by 2030? This is not just a question of numbers or ships. It is a question of strategy, ambition, geopolitics, and the future of an entire region that billions of people depend on. The Indian Ocean is often called the world's third largest ocean, but it is far more important than that simple ranking suggests. It serves as a vital highway for global trade, with nearly 80% of the world's maritime oil trade passing through its sea lanes. From the Strait of Hormuz to the Strait of Malacca, this vast stretch of water connects the energy-rich Middle East to the rapidly growing economies of East Asia. Whoever commands the Indian Ocean holds the keys to global commerce and energy security. India, sitting at the center of this ocean, has always had a special relationship with the sea. From the ancient Chola dynasty, which sent powerful naval expeditions to Southeast Asia, to the Maratha navy that challenged European colonial powers, India's maritime past is rich and complex. But after centuries of colonial rule and a focus on land-based threats, India's navy was long neglected. That is no longer the case. Today, India is determined to reclaim its place as a major maritime power. Its naval expansion is not just about defending its shores, but about projecting influence across the region and ensuring that the Indian Ocean remains free and open. But imagine, just for a moment, a future where India's navy is the undisputed dominant force in the Indian Ocean. Is this merely a dream of strategists and admirals sitting in Delhi, or is it a realistic possibility? To answer this, let us examine India's current naval capabilities, its strengths and weaknesses, its ambitious modernization plans, and the external and internal challenges that stand in its way. As of 2025, India's navy has around 150 ships, including one operational aircraft carrier, INS Vikrant, and a newly inducted indigenous carrier, INS Vikrant. The Navy also boasts around 15 conventional submarines and 2 nuclear-powered ballistic missile submarines, SSBNs, which are part of India's strategic nuclear triad. India's naval doctrine has evolved significantly over the past 2 decades. Earlier, the focus was primarily on coastal defense and protecting its immediate maritime interests. Today, the focus has shifted towards blue water capabilities, the ability to operate far from home shores, to protect sea lanes, and to project power into the wider Indian Ocean region and beyond. The centerpiece of India's blue water ambition is its aircraft carrier program. The INS Vikrant is a major milestone, the first aircraft carrier fully built in India. Though smaller than American supercarriers, it represents a significant technological and industrial achievement. Another carrier, tentatively named INS Vishal, is planned for the future. If realized, India could operate 3 carriers, providing it with unmatched reach in the region. Then there are India's submarine forces. Submarines are crucial for both deterrence and sea denial. India's conventional submarine fleet, primarily of Russian Kilo-class and German HDW designs, is aging. However, India has been inducting French-designed Scorpion-class submarines under the Project 75 program, with additional advanced submarines planned under Project 75I. Equally important are India's nuclear submarines, the Arihant-class SSBNs. These form a critical leg of India's nuclear deterrent. Their ability to remain hidden underwater for long periods gives India a credible second strike capability, an essential component of nuclear security. On the surface, India is expanding its fleet with new destroyers, frigates, and corvettes. The Kolkata-class destroyers are among the most modern, equipped with advanced radar systems and BrahMos supersonic cruise missiles. The Shivalik-class stealth frigates and Kamorta-class anti-submarine corvettes are other significant additions, enhancing both offensive and defensive capabilities. But having ships and submarines is not enough. A powerful navy also needs surveillance capabilities, logistics support, and forward bases. India has invested in maritime patrol aircraft like the P-8I Poseidon, advanced helicopters, and unmanned aerial vehicles. In terms of bases, India is developing strategic locations such as the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, which sit close to the crucial Strait of Malacca, giving it a potential choke point against adversaries. India has also signed agreements with countries like Seychelles and Mauritius to develop military facilities, further extending its reach. Moreover, India's partnerships with countries like the United States, Japan, and Australia, through the Quad grouping, enhance its strategic depth and provide avenues for joint exercises, intelligence sharing, and technology transfer. On paper, these developments paint a promising picture. However, several critical challenges remain. Firstly, the funding challenge. Naval expansion is incredibly expensive. Aircraft carriers alone can cost billions of dollars, not including the air wing and escort ships needed to protect them. submarines, especially nuclear-powered ones, are also enormously costly and technologically demanding. India's defense budget is limited, and the army traditionally receives the largest share due to continuing land-based threats from Pakistan and China. The 2024-25 defense budget allocated around 18% to the Navy, a figure that is insufficient to match the ambitious goals outlined in various maritime strategies. Secondly, the issue of industrial capacity and self-reliance. While INS Vikrant marked a breakthrough, indigenous shipbuilding in India still faces delays, cost overruns, and quality control problems. Programs like Project 75I have seen repeated delays, and domestic defense shipyards often struggle with efficiency and advanced technological integration. Thirdly, human resources. A modern navy needs highly trained officers and sailors capable of operating complex systems, conducting network-centric warfare, and handling multi-domain operations. India has made significant progress in naval education and training, but scaling this up rapidly to match fleet expansion is no small feat. Then there is the external geopolitical environment. China's rise as a maritime power poses the most significant strategic challenge to India in the Indian Ocean. The Chinese People's Liberation Army Navy, PLAN, now operates one of the largest fleets in the world, with growing blue water capabilities. China has developed what is often called the String of Pearls, a network of commercial and military facilities in countries surrounding India, including in Pakistan, Gwadar, Sri Lanka, Hambantota, Myanmar, Kyaukbu, and the Maldives. While these ports are officially commercial, they have dual-use potential, enabling the plan to operate far from Chinese shores. In 2017, China established its first overseas military base in Djibouti, at the western edge of the Indian Ocean. Since then, Chinese naval deployments in the Indian Ocean have become routine, with anti-piracy patrols and submarine visits that clearly signal its long-term intentions. Moreover, regional nations like Sri Lanka, Maldives, and Bangladesh often find themselves balancing relations between India and China, taking advantage of the competition to secure investments and military assistance. This complicates India's efforts to establish a clear sphere of influence. Another external factor is the United States. While the US and India are strategic partners and share concerns about China, the US remains the predominant global maritime power and will continue to have significant presence in the Indian Ocean. India has benefited from stronger ties with the US, particularly through logistics agreements and joint exercises, but this also means India's autonomy in decision-making could be constrained. Beyond state actors, non-traditional security threats also loom large. Piracy, terrorism, illegal fishing, and natural disasters require the Navy to engage in constabulary and humanitarian roles, diverting resources from pure warfighting capability. So, given all these factors, can India realistically dominate the Indian Ocean by 2030? The answer depends on what we mean by dominate. If we mean having an absolute monopoly of power, the answer is no. The presence of China and the US, as well as other regional navies like those of Australia and France, means no single country will have uncontested control. However, if we define dominance as having the most significant influence and the ability to secure its interests decisively, India has a credible pathway toward that goal. By 2030, India aims to have around 200 ships, including more submarines and at least 2 operational carriers. While this is still smaller than the Chinese Navy, India's geographical advantages, central position in the ocean, proximity to key choke points, and a network of island territories, give it an edge. Moreover, India's experience in operating in the Indian Ocean, strong regional relationships, and improving maritime domain awareness strengthen its position as the natural net security provider for the region. India's strategic focus on the Indo-Pacific concept aligns its naval ambitions with like-minded countries, creating a collective framework that indirectly supports India's influence. At the same time, to achieve even partial dominance, India needs to address its challenges seriously. Increasing the naval budget, streamlining defense procurement, enhancing shipbuilding capacity, and investing in human capital are non-negotiable priorities. Public support and political will are equally vital. Large defense projects require sustained commitment across different governments and administrations. Domestic politics, economic crises, or unforeseen events like pandemics can derail these plans. There is also the question of technological autonomy. India has made strides in indigenous missile systems, radars, and ship design. However, it still relies heavily on imports for engines, aircraft, advanced electronics, and submarine technologies. Strengthening domestic defense R&D and private sector participation is essential for long-term self-reliance and resilience. India's role as a regional humanitarian actor also boosts its soft power. During the 2004 tsunami, the Indian Navy's swift response won goodwill across the region. Similar efforts during the COVID-19 pandemic and more recent natural disasters have reinforced the image of India as a responsible power. This blend of hard power and soft power is unique and could be a decisive factor in shaping India's maritime destiny. The Indian Navy's motto, Sham No Varana, which means may the Lord of the Oceans be auspicious unto us, reflects a deeper cultural connection to the sea. It is not merely a domain for conflict but a source of prosperity, connectivity, and civilization itself. Looking to the future, technological advances such as unmanned surface and underwater vehicles, artificial intelligence for naval operations, hypersonic weapons, and new forms of electronic warfare will reshape naval combat. India needs to invest now to remain competitive in these emerging fields. Cybersecurity is another critical frontier. As navies become more networked and dependent on data, the risk of cyber attacks grows exponentially. India's cybersecurity infrastructure for maritime forces must keep pace with these threats to ensure operational security and effectiveness. Regional cooperation mechanisms, such as the Indian Ocean Rim Association, IORA, could also play a more significant role by 2030. India, as a leading member, has the opportunity to shape norms and promote cooperative security arrangements that align with its interests. At the same time, India must avoid the trap of overextension. Trying to do too much with limited resources can weaken overall readiness and leave vulnerabilities exposed. Striking the right balance between ambition and capacity will define whether India's naval rise becomes sustainable or falters under its own weight. To return to our initial question, is it possible for India to dominate the Indian Ocean by 2030? In the most absolute military sense, no. But in terms of establishing itself as the principal security provider, shaping the maritime environment, and deterring adversaries from challenging its core interests, the answer is a strong yes, if it addresses its internal and external challenges decisively and consistently. Imagine again that future where an Indian aircraft carrier strike group patrols near the Strait of Malacca, a nuclear submarine silently watches over the Arabian Sea, and Indian maritime patrol aircraft monitor every ship entering and leaving the Bay of Bengal. In this scenario, India acts as the guardian of the Indian Ocean, respected by allies and feared by adversaries. This is not just a dream, it is a possibility that hinges on choices made today. Investments in shipyards, training academies, defense research labs, and diplomatic relationships will determine whether India becomes a maritime power that can shape the destiny of its oceanic neighborhood. Ultimately, India's naval ambitions are about much more than prestige. They are about securing vital sea lanes, protecting economic interests, ensuring energy security, and providing stability to a region that is essential to global prosperity. The coming years will be decisive. As India continues to rise as a global power, its navy will play a central role in defining its place on the world stage. By 2030, the Indian Navy may not completely dominate the Indian Ocean, but it will almost certainly be the most influential regional actor, capable of protecting its interests and contributing to the security of the broader Indo-Pacific region. India's maritime journey is a story of rediscovery, ambition, and resilience. It is a story that is still being written, and each new ship, each new partnership, and each new innovation adds a chapter to it. As we watch this story unfold, one thing is clear: the Indian Ocean will never be the same again. And whether as friend or rival, the world will have to reckon with the reality of India's growing maritime power. So, the next time you look at a map and see that vast blue expanse between Africa, the Middle East, and Asia, remember that it is not just water. It is a dynamic, contested, and strategic space where India's navy is striving to shape the future. India's 2030 naval power is not just about ships or submarines. It is about a vision of security, prosperity, and influence stretching from the shores of Africa to the gates of the Pacific. Will India succeed? Only time will tell. But one thing is certain: the waves of the Indian Ocean are already carrying the echoes of a rising maritime giant. And as we approach 2030, all eyes will be on India to see whether it can truly turn this dream into reality. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into India's naval future. If you found this exploration thought-provoking, stay tuned as we continue to cover the evolving dynamics of global power and security. The seas are vast, and the story is far from over.